Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hockey Talk. Today, we're talking playoffs. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If this is the first video you're watching of mine today, that's fine, but I also did upload another video talking about the LA Kings, that's this video. We're talking LA Kings and Oilers in this video. The other video was on the Minnesota Wild and the St. Louis Blues. Today, of course, we're talking Kings Oilers, which should be a really good series that I'm really looking forward to watching. Although, unfortunately, those are going to be some later games, 9, 10 o'clock, so it might be a little bit harder to watch, but I'm certainly looking forward to watching them, especially with a guy like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl playing some playoff hockey. Hopefully it goes a little bit better than it did last year. Sorry, Oilers fans, for bringing that up. But this should be a really good series, even though, as I talked about in my Blues Wilds preview, this probably shouldn't happen, but the current playoff format dictates that it will. So here we are. We're talking Oilers Kings, and let's not beat around the bush. Let's just jump right into it, shall we? So let's look at the numbers. Looking at the numbers between these two teams, they're both they're a little different, aren't they? Just looking at them, as you can see with the Oilers, they score quite a bit. Not quite as much as the Blues and the Wild do, but still quite a bit. 3.49 goals per game and 3.07 goals against per game. That's certainly a question about the Oilers. It really has been for a couple years now, as goaltending is always going to be a question mark. Do they have the goaltending that can take them deep into the playoffs? We still don't know, but Mike Smith is having a pretty good year. Looks like he'll be the starter for the Oilers in this series. Kings are a bit more of a low-event team. They're not scoring nearly as much as the Oilers, but they also give up a lot less goals than the Oilers. They're not really scoring a ton more goals per game than they are against, so it kind of tells you that they're not really exactly they're kind of a low event team. There's really no other way to put it, and that includes special teams. I mean, you can see the Oilers power play, again, much like the Blues, one of the better power plays in the league, and then the Kings power play is not that. So, and their penalty kill also not great. So this is the third best power play in the league, and it's really not surprising when you consider who's on that power play unit, right? McDavid, Draisaitl. Good luck stopping that, Kings, and every other team in the league for that matter. The Kings had one of the worst power plays in the league, 27th in the league, the lowest among playoff teams. So that's certainly going to be a factor. I think the next closest team is Washington, which is kind of surprising how good Washington's power play has been over the years, that they're towards the bottom. So that's certainly going to be an area of concern for the Kings. And then, of course, we talk about penalty kill, the Oilers' penalty kill. Certainly not elite by any stretch. It's about middle of the pack, 17th, but LA's is 22nd. So I think for the Kings, they're gonna need their special teams to be a whole lot better in this series, because quite frankly, I just don't see how you can beat a team as good as the Oilers with that special team production. So hopefully for them, and for the sake of us wanting a really good series, we can see it better. And head-to-head, the Oilers 3-1. One of those games went to overtime. So the Kings, they got to have their work cut out for them. I think they're not the favorites to win, but this is the thing about playoff hockey I talked about this in the Blues Wild situation, is you can kind of throw a whole lot of this stuff out the window just because it really doesn't matter that much what happens in the regular season. The whole mindset of playoff hockey shifts to a more defensive kind of mindset. The game's much tighter. You're not going to score 4 goals a game very often unless you're playing really poor defensively. You're probably also not going to be able to count on your power play getting the opportunities at the same situational times that you might have gotten them in the regular season. So for the Oilers to have the third best power play, that's great, but you got to be good at 5-on-5, because you just don't know if and when those power plays are going to come in the playoffs versus the regular season. So it's really interesting looking at these numbers just to kind of see, okay, so how are the Kings stacking up against the Oilers? Well, they're a very low event team. They're not really going to outscore you. They're not going to their goaltending is not the most spectacular thing in the world, but they are well coached. They obviously have structure, and they win more than they lose despite rather pedestrian numbers, I would say. But here we are. So with that, let's take a look at some other underlying numbers here. Let's look at the goaltending battle next, because that is also very interesting to sort of look at and kind of examine as well. So, looking at the goalie battle here, I don't know if it's been confirmed because there's still a couple days before the playoffs start, but I think the most likely goaltending battle is probably the oldest starting goaltender battle we're going to see this postseason, and that's Jonathan Quick and Mike Smith going at it like it's 2012. So yeah, I mean just looking at the records between the two goaltenders, neither one of them played an overwhelming amount of games. They kind of split the net. The Oilers had kind of a bit of a makeshift three-man rotation with Smith, Koskinen, and Stuart Skinner, and then Cal Peterson took a lot of the work against to take some of the load off of Quick, which again is going to be interesting come playoff time when you've got a guy like Quick who's a little bit older, been at this for a while. Does he have the makeup to go on a deep playoff run for the Kings? I'd like to think he does, but we'll see. Goals against average, the advantage goes to Quick, 2.59, but that's a bit of a team stat. And again, we talk about the Kings being a low event team. It's not really surprising to see that despite the fact that the save percentage is only .910, which is not bad by any stretch, but it's not elite, it's not amazing, he still has a pretty good and low goals against average. The Kings don't seem to give you too much when it comes to offense, especially when Quick's is in net. You know, Peterson, his numbers were not quite as good. Save percentage, that's kind of where you give the edge to Mike Smith. But again, we're talking about 0.05 of a decimal spot here, so it makes a big difference when you're facing a ton of shots. But it's going to be interesting. I don't really expect either one of these guys to be the main stories in the series. And if one of these guys does play really well, it might be the thing that gives their team the edge. Who knows? Now, goals saved above expected is that fourth stat. So if you don't know what that means, essentially it means every goal has an expected amount to go in. It's given a percentage basically. And so goals saved above expected would be, essentially this means that in Jonathan Quick's case, he stopped 11.89, so basically 12 shots more than he was expected to, right? Those are 12 more goals than he was expected to give up over the entire course of the season. And in Mike Smith's case, that was a 3.48. So both goaltenders played better than they were expected to, which is not to say that they're bad and they played better than expected. It's just expected is almost like average in a way. And so these guys kind of rose to the occasion, if you will, is probably a good way to put it. And they both had 2 shutouts. So, I mean, this is not the most exhilarating goaltending battle. There's probably more notable goaltending matchups with more storylines, but we're talking about a lot of experience in the net for both of these teams. Smith is, I think, 39, if I'm not mistaken, and Quick is also up there in age. So we're talking about 2 goaltenders that have seen a lot of playoff hockey over the years. Let me quickly see. Mike Smith is 40. He just turned 40 in March, and he's played a career total of 29 playoff games, which is not as much as I thought, but then again, it is the fact that he hasn't played on a ton of playoff caliber hockey teams. he didn't make his NHL playoff debut until he was 29 with Phoenix back in 2011-2012 when Jonathan Quick's Kings ended his season and won the cup. So Quick has got a little bit more experience on Smith. I think he's got 85 career playoff games, 2 Stanley Cups, and a Conn Smythe trophy. So he is a very good goaltender in his own right. Probably past his prime now, as he's 36. He just turned 36 in January. So obviously there's a bit of an old boys kind of matchup here, I guess. So this is certainly going to be something to monitor. It's just kind of like, I honestly think that, with all the star power the Oilers have, Quick is going to have his work cut out for him. But, Mike Smith is not going to have an easy job by any stretch, especially because I'm not particularly fond of the defensive core of the Oilers. It's been really good under Jay Woodcroft, the man who took over for Dave Tippett when he was fired. But I'm not sure I love the makeup of that group. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see this matchup, because I honestly think that the winner of this series might just be the team that got better goaltending, which is not necessarily always the case. And I'm not even talking strictly stats per se, right? Like Mike Smith could end up with better stats than Jonathan Quick, but if Jonathan Quick makes the timely saves in the most important moments for his team, they could win, and vice versa. So I think this could actually be sort of the thing where it's like, we're not looking at this goaltending matchup as elite versus elite, but I think that these are the types of things where the better goaltender might just be the thing that gives their team the edge, because we know that Connor McDavid is going to do Connor McDavid things, and we know that the Kings don't have a guy like Connor McDavid on their team, but as we've seen in the past, and it's not strictly a Connor McDavid thing, but you don't have to have the best player in a playoff series to win. You just have to make clutch moments, clutch goals, goaltending, clutch penalty killing. All these different things are going to matter, and I think it really could come down to the goaltending in this series. And I like Quick's season. I'm going to be honest. I remember last year it was Cal Peterson was really the guy for the Kings for the last, I think, 2 years really. I kind of figured that Quick was on his way out and didn't really have it anymore, if you will. But he's been pretty good this year. Really kind of a bounce back year, because you look at his numbers this year, they're great. But last season, his numbers, he hadn't had a really good season in a couple of years. So this is a nice bounce back for him. It's nice to see, and it'll be interesting to kind of see. He hasn't played a ton this year, only 46 games. So you could wonder if that's going to hurt him because he doesn't have the durability to go that long. Or it might be a huge factor for him to kind of not have overexerted himself and be ready to show out in the playoffs and rise to the occasion, much like we've seen with Carey Price in the past. And Mike Smith, they need him to be better. There's really no other way to put it, right? Last season in the playoffs, again, I'm sorry, Oilers fans, but I have to mention it. You were swept by the Jets, and I'm not blaming it all on Mike Smith, but I just felt like, especially in Winnipeg, they just didn't get enough timely saves. And I think that that's going to be a huge thing in this series. So I really do think that this could be a sneaky, notable goaltending matchup that we're not really going to talk about a ton, because it's not big names or up-and-coming stars. It's guys that you would think are on their way out of the league. But if either one of these teams are going to go far, one of these two goaltenders is going to have to be a big part of that. And I think we're going to see the winner of this series most likely get into be a big part of their success. Especially for the LA Kings, like if it gets down to a track meet, which you don't generally see in the playoffs, but if it comes down to who's going to score more goals, I don't really like the Kings' chances. So I think Jonathan Quick is going to have, and the defensive group in front of him, which, by the way, is missing Drew Doughty and Sean Walker. Drew Doughty played a lot of big minutes for this team. They're going to need that. So I'm very interested to kind of see how it kind of unfolds. I spent a lot of time talking about this goalie battle because it's intriguing to me. It really is. And lastly, here we're going to look at the leading scorers and you know other leaders for the teams. For the Oilers, obviously, the league leader in points, Connor McDavid, having another fantastic season, setting career highs, and we're not even really talking about it because, well, A, Matthews is doing some incredible things, scoring goals, and B, I think we've just also come to expect Connor McDavid to do ridiculous things, and so 123 points in 82 games, or however many games he's played. I don't know I can't remember if he's missed any. Is great, but it probably isn't even as good as he was last year, where he couldn't have set a career high because he just didn't play enough games because there was only so many games in the season. I mean, he had 108 points I think last year in 56 games. So in 82 he's only got 20 more points. Still an incredible season from Connor McDavid. And how about Leon Draisaitl, right? Draisaitl, 55 goals. Which again, how many times does a guy score 55 goals and not even really come close to leading the league? Because the guy's got 60. It doesn't happen very often, especially in recent history, which highlights just how good of a season and how unfortunate it is for Draisaitl that he can't really win the Rocket despite the great season, and he could finish with a few more points. Again, as of the time I'm recording this matchup is set, but there's a game left for both of these teams, I believe. Or no, I think the Kings are done, but I do believe the Oilers still have one game left. So he could end up with 56, 57, maybe 58. Probably won't catch Matthews though. But a great season for him. And again, McDavid, 79 assists. Let's look at the Kings, right? They don't have a guy who's putting up point per games. And again, it kind of, adds to this low event team of where they're not really exciting. They're really not worth watching the way another team would be because they don't have a star. But they're well coached. They're well structured. They almost kind of remind me, similarly, not identical, but similar to the Islanders, of where it's like this is a team that could just go far if they are disciplined in the structure they play and do a lot of good things. Just because they're not an easy out. They're not a good. They're not a team you're going to beat easily, but they're probably not going to wow you and do things that you go, wow, this team is scary good. They're just like, this team is really good at what they do, and what they do is really successful in today's NHL. And I think the Kings have the chance to do something like that. And again, keep in mind that this is a Kings team that's supposed to have one of the best prospect pools in the NHL. So this is a bit of an unexpected year for them to be this good. And so it's really impressive that they're here putting up this sort of success. And Kopitar leading the way with 67 points. Adrian Kempe with 35 goals. And Kopitar also leads the team in assists. It's great to see a guy like Kopitar who's been in the league for a long time now. A two-time Cup winner, a guy who's probably really itching to get going in the playoffs after missing the last couple of years. He's another guy that, he's 34 now. He's got 2 cups, but I know he wants another one, and I'm excited to watch a guy who has performed pretty adequately in the playoffs step up. It's crazy, right? The 2 times they won the Stanley Cup, he had 20 points in 20 games and 26 points in 26 games. Didn't win a Conn Smythe in either of them, but he clearly showed out for his team. 79 career playoff games under his belt. He could be a very important piece, both as a leader and as just as their best player in this postseason, especially without Drew Doughty. That could be huge. Again, here's another advanced analytic. We talked about goals saved above expected. Here's another advanced analytic. We've got Alex Edler and Jesse Puljujarvi leading their team in expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5. And again, basically we talk about what expected goals are. Essentially, when you're on the ice at 5-on-5, these guys are expected to score more of the goals than the other team. So they control the play is a good way to look at it. They're more likely to be, on the ice for goals for than against, or they're creating scoring chances that should result in more goals for. and this is actually a really good testament to Jesse Puljujarvi and the defensive impact that he has on the ice for the Oilers. Puljujarvi only had, let me take a look here. I think it's like 13 goals, 14 goals this season, 36 points. And, he's playing with McDavid, so you would think, oh, he's not having a great season. He should do more. But his defensive impact on a line where, McDavid can focus more on offense because you've got a guy who's doing so much good things as a defensive player is huge. And for the Kings, Edler doing the same thing, huge addition for them, especially with Doughty being out. His experience as a veteran guy could be huge for the Kings. Veterans, I hate when people overvalue leadership, but we saw with the Canadians last year, sometimes having guys who've just been in all sorts of situations and having veteran leadership is going to be pretty big, I think, for the Kings to have guys who've won Stanley Cups, or in Edler's case, at least just been on some playoff runs and has seen just about everything in his long career. This could be a really good series. And it's for me, the big difference is there was a lot of discourse over Connor McDavid and the penalties he's drawn or lack thereof, both in the regular season, but especially in the playoffs last year. That will be interesting to see if that changes. Truthfully, I don't anticipate it just because it's the way the NHL goes. But they need McDavid to be huge for them. He drives the bus, as does Draisaitl. They need those two guys to step up. And if you're the Kings, you need those two guys to remain in check. You're not going to hold them pointless in a 7-game series. But if you can limit their production to, 4 points in 4 games like the Jets did last year, you're in good shape. You're in really good shape, actually. So, I think this could be a really good series. And with that, I think it's time to log a prediction. I think I'm going to go with the Oilers to win this one. I'm going to say 6 games. I think this could be a really good series. And like I said, I think Jonathan Quick has the potential to be a pretty good X factor for the Kings. I think if he can have a stellar performance here or there, if he could find a way to maybe reach into his bag and become vintage Jonathan Quick and steal a game for the Kings, the whole series could shift. I really do think that this Kings team is well coached and well disciplined. I just think that the Oilers are rolling right now. After they've moved on to Jay Woodcroft, I think they're like 23-9 and stuff. Like the wins have just been pouring on for them. They are a much better team, and I just feel like there's a little bit of a hint of desperation from guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, where they know even if they don't win the cup, they need something to be happy about. They need a playoff series win or two. I think we see them come out and play the best hockey we've ever seen them play this time of year. I think that the pressure is on. I think they know it, and I think they put more pressure on themselves than anybody else could ever. And I think they're going to try and exert their will. I think, like I said, I think this is going to be a good series. I don't expect the Oilers to steamroll the Kings or vice versa. I think these two teams are a little different in how they play, but I think that we could see some really good hockey for 6 or 7 games. I've got the Oilers in 6, but this is the beautiful thing about playoff hockey. Anything could happen. And the Kings could win this game in 4, or this series in 4. The Oilers could win it in 4, and anything can go from there. So let me know what you think. Who do you got winning this series? Who do you want to see win this series? And who do you think is the X factor in this series? I think Jonathan Quick could be the X factor. I also think maybe Mike Smith could be that X factor, because we know what you're getting in McDavid and Draisaitl. If they're your X factor, it's really not that entertaining to talk about them, right? They do their own thing. I think when it comes down to X factors, guys that need to be difference makers in this series beyond the obvious ones, I look at both goaltenders as the guys that could do it. What do you guys think? Who is the X factor for you? Maybe it's a coach. Maybe it's Todd McClellan for the Kings, or Woodcroft for the Oilers. Maybe it's a guy who was a huge X factor for the Canadians in their playoff run last year and failed to know. Maybe it's Jesse Puljujarvi for the Oilers. Who knows? All I know is I think this is going to be a good series, and I'm going to go Oilers in 6. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you for watching. And I'll see you guys hopefully pretty soon with another one of these videos.